Hello, everyone. So let's get started. It is a pleasure to welcome you today to our webinar, Digitalization of Financial Institutions, Due Diligence Guidelines for Investors. Please note that this webinar will be recorded, and we kindly ask that you mute your microphone when not speaking and use the chat box for any questions or comments throughout the presentation. So first, let me introduce our speakers. Mark Fleming is a consultant with IFC, CGAP, and other distinguished organizations. He is also the president of Frontier Ventures, where he provides advisory services to financial service providers and regulatory authorities. Mark has extensive experience guiding financial institutions and funders through digital transformation processes and helping them create more value with digitization. For the past 3 years, Mark has served as the technical lead for the CGAP MFI digitization project. Welcome, Mark. Caroline Vance is a project finance specialist at the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, DFC. Prior to joining DFC, Caroline was the Capital Innovation and Engagement Director at RefEd and held senior positions at Deutsche Bank, where she was responsible for originating and managing portfolios of impact investments. She was also part of the team that tested the guidance we will be discussing today. My name is Isabel Barris. Like Mark, I have been working on the CGAP MFI digitization project since 2021, focusing on testing various strategies to scale the approach and reach more financial institutions, and I will be your moderator today. Let's go to the agenda. Can we just go to the agenda? Yeah, thank you. During this webinar, Mark will start by providing guidance for investors interested in supporting the digitization of financial institutions, drawing from CGAP's research on the digitization of microfinance institutions. After giving us an overview of the guidance, he will then illustrate how a funder can apply the approach by presenting a case study of a financial institution seeking funding to automate its loan renewal decision-making process. Following Mark's presentation, Caroline will share reflections from DFC on the application of this guidance at 2 institutions in India. And finally, we will reserve time for questions at the end of the session. So if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, we ask that you please post them in the chat. So let me start by giving you some background on the CGAP MFI digitization project. The project led to the creation of the guidance that we'll be discussing today. So we wanted to start with a little bit of background. The project began 3 years ago when CGAP set out to explore how and where value is created in the microfinance sector through digital transformation. CGAP wanted to understand why, despite significant investments, so few digitization initiatives had successfully transformed the traditional MFI model. And to explore this question, CGAP conducted extensive research, examining over 120 financial institutions across various legal structures, including banks, microfinance institutions, and non-bank financial institutions. The aim was to identify the common elements of success, as well as the main challenges that were holding these initiatives back. CGAP highlighted 5 MFIs that had successfully created measurable customer and business value through digitization, and these case studies started to reveal a set of principles that drive success. From 2022 to 2023, these principles were tested with nearly 30 institutions, focusing particularly on 2 key areas: automating loan renewals and developing a business intelligence practice, both of which are key to unlocking the value of digitization. You'll see a summary of these principles on the right side of the slide. Throughout the project, CGAP actively involved funders, recognizing their crucial role in driving success. And last year, CGAP published insights to help funders more effectively support digitization efforts. The digitization guidance we'll be discussing today builds on this work, showing how the lessons from the project can inform the due diligence process for investors, helping them make more informed decisions. So with that, I will hand it over to Mark, who has a lot to cover, and he will walk us through the guidelines developed in collaboration with the DFC team.
All right, thank you. Good day, everyone. This webinar is going to focus very much on guidance and approach for assessing a proposal to launch a new product or channel that uses digital technology. And maybe the first thing to say is that it's a very specialized piece of an assessment toolkit. It doesn't replace the broader due diligence practices that most of us know, but I think it's helpful to think of this as the missing piece. As Isabel said, this comes out of our work, first of all, researching many institutions that had invested in technology. It comes out of our attempt to find the best cases of value creation. And in that exercise, the overwhelming takeaway that we had was really not the successes. It was the extremely high incidence of failure, the high incidence of companies investing millions of dollars in digital products and channels and not generating value. And this was also the self-assessment of many of the institutions that we interviewed. And so this piece now really comes out of that, because out of seeing the failure, we started to focus very, very much on, well, what are the characteristics of the institutions that succeed, and how does that differ from the ones that are failing? And those 5 principles that Isabel mentioned are the takeaways from what it takes to succeed. So this exercise we're going to go through today is basically, how do you find out if a company is using those 5 principles? Okay, let's jump into it. Next slide. I think we missed one. Should be, why do we focus on product development? Next slide. Okay. Talk a bit about why do we focus on the product development plan? Why is there so much here? And I'm going to use a simple analogy, but it's sort of as if a company told you, we're going to build a rocket and we're going to fly it to the moon. You're now going to shift your attention to the question of, show me your plans for the rocket and show me the laboratory you're going to make it in. The guiding principle behind this is that what we found is that it is very difficult to go to an institution and do a general due diligence on just, for example, asking them to explain how they develop products or asking them about their business intelligence practice. Their capabilities are actually demonstrated in the very specific plan they have for developing the product. That's a key point here. And so this due diligence guidelines focus very much on the product development initiative and the practice that creates it. Helpful to point out that these 5 principles translate readily into an agile product development practice. Anyone familiar with agile will immediately recognize the words, the language, the artifacts, the processes here, because it is essentially an agile product development practice. And what we're going to offer you here is really a high-level checklist. It is a high-level checklist for someone who knows enough about agile product development to be able to recognize it when they see it, and capable of bringing in the experts on the highly technical pieces. All right, go to the previous slide. Yeah. We found this to be effective for both established financial institutions. I said 2 of the main use cases that we found would be banks or microfinance institutions, financial institutions that want to build a new product or channel. So this could be, we want to build a agent network, we want to build an automated loan decisioning model, and launch a new product. Increasingly now it's fintechs who are providing those services, platform as service and software as service models. So it works for both financial institutions and the fintechs that support them. We'll also say that this tool is really derived from a tool that management and a board would use in a company that has an established agile practice. So that is to say that if head of business comes to the CEO and eventually to the board and says, I want to invest $4 million in launching this new product, what we're going to show you today is the thing that head of business would be showing to the CEO. And ultimately, if it's big enough, the CEO would show to the board. And that's why this assessment is expecting to find these things happening in the institution. Next slide. So what does this mean for due diligence? I'm sorry, there should be a slide. There's a slide before this. No?
This is what I have, but if this seems like the wrong version, we could take a short break.
I can work with it, but this is the second slide that's been missing. So
No, that's
we'll see how it goes. I'm going to run quickly through at a high level. These are the things that we're looking for when we're doing this assessment. And we've organized it into 3 high-level questions. The first question is there a well-defined strategy for creating value? When we talk about this, this breaks down into some more specific questions, but this already starts the foundation for seeing the level of clarity and precision which the company is bringing to it. Second has to do with business intelligence. Is the business intelligence practice good enough to generate insights on customer behavior? And the third is the company prepared to deliver the product? And we'll walk through the very specific instruments that we would expect to find on it. This product roadmap, how exactly they're going to implement the technology solution, what are their metrics for measuring success, and what does their product team look like and how is it resourced? Okay, let's see what we have here on the next slide. Okay, so in the spirit of this, I'm going to go back over these elements of the due diligence process, but we're going to talk about them conceptually. What is this thing? What am I looking for? But then I'm going to show you an example from the real world of a company's plan. And this again is very important because it kind of goes to our main point that what you need to see is the company has this thing, and you're actually looking at the plans for the rocket, and you're looking at their laboratory. So what we're going to do is walk through and switch back and forth between these different 3 phases of the assessment, and show you examples that highlight what we think are some of the best practices for how companies do it. All right, next slide. So this question, is there a well-defined strategy for creating value? Number one question is, what is the customer and business value that you aspire to create with this product? And this we start with this because this is where many of the problems start. It is very, very common